This deadly stabbing happened outside this gas station on Coney Island Avenue and Avenue P at around 11:15 Saturday night. Police say an argument ensues, leading to a deadly stabbing of 28-year-old Sibley O'Shea.
Breaking tonight, a grand jury in New York City has indicted a 17-year-old suspect on a hate crime charge after a brutal confrontation at a gas pump in Brooklyn resulted in the death of O'Shae Sibley.
And I wish I could tell O'Shea one more time how much.
Because you represent LGBT and the fact that he was doing nothing more but voguing and dancing here, he did not deserve to die.
On the evening of July 29th, 2023, a 28-year-old man was stabbed outside a gas station in Brooklyn. It was just after 11 p.m. when police responded to reports of an altercation at a Mobil gas station on Coney Island Avenue. When they arrived, they found a man collapsed on the sidewalk, struggling to breathe, blood soaking through his shirt. That man was O'Shae Sibley, a professional dancer who had simply been voguing with friends to Beyoncé's music just minutes earlier. But this wasn't just a random attack. This was a targeted act of hate. A group of strangers took offense, and what started as a carefree summer night with music and movement turned into a tragedy that shocked New York and the world.
I'm glad they got the guy. I hope justice be served. And it's just a tragedy, and I just want to thank everybody that came out and showed love and support.
This is the life and death of O'Shae Sibley and the senseless act of hate that took him away. This young man was only 28, a lively African-American dancer and choreographer from Philadelphia. He was gifted with dance techniques and was quite socially conscious. Known for performing professionally with Philadanco and Alvin Ailey's Ailey extension, it was no denying that this youth had a flourishing career set to reach incredible heights. As a part of an all-queer dance group, Sibley also worked on a video project called Vogue for Black Lives Matter. The most admirable fact is that he performed not merely for his own benefit, but for artistic and social activism purposes too. Nevertheless, his love for humanity went unreciprocated by some individuals.
O'Shea's neighbors in Brownsville say he was always kind and helpful.
July 29th, 2023, Midwood, Brooklyn. It was the evening of a midsummer day when the disaster happened. O'Shea was with his friends, refueling their car in Midwood, Brooklyn. They were only spending time together. Beyoncé's Renaissance played in the background, and they vogued, a dance form that imitates fashion models. Then soon, they were faced with an ill-fated encounter. It was unprovoked hostility from a group that approached them and demanded that they stop dancing. They proceeded to hurl racist, homophobic slurs at the peaceful friend group. But Sibley's response was kind and confident, not one to become entangled in petty fights. It's all respect. We're allowed to be here just like you.
Say, we may be gay, and we listen to our music, but it's no hate. It's all love.
Around 11 p.m., it began like any other summer night, just O'Shae Sibley and his friends at a Mobil gas station on Coney Island Avenue, laughing, dancing, unwinding. But what started as carefree would soon spiral into something far darker, because while most of the group shouting homophobic slurs eventually walked away, one stayed behind, and that choice would turn the night into a nightmare. Recording the scene on his phone, he continued to hurl additional insults aimed at Sibley and his friends. The hostility among them continued to grow, and shouts soon turned into lunges. Sibley and two of his friends approached the man, who then pulled out a knife from his pocket, pointed it at one of Sibley's friends, and started to threaten the group. In the heat of the moment, the teenager, later identified as Dmitry Popov, aged 17, moved towards Sibley and, with a single stroke, stabbed him in the chest. Sibley's friends, those who witnessed the incident, said he fell into the arms of one named Otis Pena, a friend, the same friend whose birthday was being celebrated at the beach earlier that day. In a self-recorded video uploaded hours after the killing, Otis Pena said, "At the time of the incident, Otis was by his friend's side, pressing his hand against Sibley's wound, presumably, with desperate hope of keeping him from bleeding out. Witnesses called 911 and tried to help, but time was running out. The NYPD and emergency medical services finally arrived at the scene, and Sibley was rushed to the Maimonides Medical Center. But there was nothing the medical officials could do. Sibley had already lost the battle for life and only reached the facility to be pronounced dead. Sibley's death sent shockwaves throughout New York City as well as the entire nation. Within 24 hours of the stabbing, vigils began forming. While some were silent, others were loud and with music and dances that paid tribute to Sibley. At the gas station where he was killed, candles were placed on the pavement, surrounded by posters, flowers, and rainbow flags. His friends and fellow dancers returned to the spot, not just to mourn, but to vogue. The same expressive art that was interpreted as hate and led to the death of Sibley.
For my brother to no longer be here, it's like the night without the moon.
Participants used dance as a means of defiance, reclaiming the site in an event titled Vogue as an Act of Resistance, and turned their grief into a form of protest. Speakers from the ballroom and queer community, including activist Queen Jean, emphasized that voguing is a generational act of power and refusal to be silenced. A parallel memorial was even held at the Stonewall Inn, a historic touchstone for queer activism that's known for unifying local communities in shared grief and resolve. In Philadelphia, O'Shae's hometown, members of Philadanco and fellow artists gathered for a candlelit tribute honoring his life and artistry.
I spoke with O'Shae Sibley's best friend, who was there the night he was killed. He tells me they both moved here to New York City from Philadelphia together to pursue their dreams.
On social media and official platforms, Beyoncé honored Sibley with a stark statement on her website that read, "Rest in power, O'Shae Sibley." LGBTQ+ advocacy groups, including GLAAD, resonated with Beyoncé's tribute, which highlighted a concerning rise in violence against queer individuals. Political leaders, including the Brooklyn District Attorney, condemned the killing as one that was rooted in hate and promised to pursue justice for Sibley.
We promised the family that we would have a vigorous and thorough prosecution to hold this offender, who is 17 years old, accountable for his deadly deeds on that day.
O'Shae's death didn't just break hearts. It started conversations. Conversations about how dangerous it can still be to be black, queer, and joyful in public. About how simply being yourself can make you a target. From the sidewalks of Brooklyn to social media feeds across the world, people began to see his story for what it was. Not just a tragedy, but a reminder that for many, dancing, laughing, or just existing openly is still treated like a threat. That night, after the murder, the Mobil gas station, otherwise known for being a safe location among locals, had turned into a crime scene. After piecing together witness accounts and reviewing surveillance footage frame by frame, investigators landed on a name.
Based on the surveillance video and witness accounts, police have identified the suspect as a 17-year-old. They have his name and they're looking for him tonight.
Dmitry Popov, a Brooklyn resident, now wanted for murder. The accused was later described as a dark-haired teenager, wearing a black shirt and red shorts. On August 4th, 2023, he walked into a police station alongside his attorney. But was this an act of conscience? Or was it a strategy? Because by then, his face was already on the surveillance footage. The evidence had caught up to him. Did he turn himself in, or did he simply run out of time? During the attack, Popov claimed he was offended by Sibley's dancing, citing his identity as a Muslim at the time. But that narrative didn't hold for long. His attorney, Mark Pollard, later told the press that Popov wasn't Muslim at all. He was, in his words, a good Christian boy, a high school senior, born in the US to Russian parents, no criminal record. While Pollard painted a picture of a quiet kid caught in the wrong moment, the contradictions in his client's story were hard to ignore. Detectives later went on to visit Popov's family home to question him. Whether they found a weapon there or not remained unclear, but his lawyer denied hearing anything about the weapon and said, If they found a knife, I didn't hear it in court. Then he refused to comment on whether he was present at the gas station on the night of the crime. Popoff was arraigned in youth court on August 4th, 2023, nearly a week after the deadly encounter. At just 17 years old, he wasn't treated like a typical minor. Instead, he was charged as a juvenile offender, a legal status reserved for underage suspects accused of the most serious crimes. In Popoff's case, being charged as a juvenile offender gave prosecutors the ability to pursue the case as if he were an adult. Brooklyn's district attorney later took to social media with a clear message. This borough doesn't tolerate hate. It stands for diversity, inclusion, and the freedom to live without fear.
The NYPD says the teens used homophobic slurs and made anti-black statements.
According to Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez, the hate crime designation reflects evidence that Popoff targeted Sibley due to his perceived identity. The DA's office noted that Popoff allegedly hurled homophobic and anti-black slurs during the confrontation. Popoff entered a plea of not guilty to all charges during his August arraignment. His defense attorney indicated that they may pursue a self-defense argument, citing surveillance footage and Popoff's phone video as evidence that the defendant was attempting to back away when the confrontation escalated. As per the available reports, Popoff, the 17-year-old who stabbed Sibley, was served with a 9-count indictment in which he was charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder and menacing, first-degree manslaughter, second-degree aggravated harassment, fourth-degree criminal possession of a weapon, 2 counts of second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter as a hate crime.
The Brooklyn DA announced a grand jury voted to indict a 17-year-old high school student with murder in the second degree as a hate crime.
Oren Yaniv, a spokesperson from the District General's office, later informed the media that the multiple counts of manslaughter and hate crime-related murder are based on 2 separate legal theories called intentional and depraved indifference. According to the law, a hate crime occurs when an individual commits an offense that is partially or fully motivated by certain factors. These include the victim's race, sexual orientation, religion, or other protected characteristics. In Popoff's case, prosecutors argue the stabbing wasn't just brutal, it was fueled by hate. They allege that homophobic and racist bias played a direct role in the attack, triggering a hate crime enhancement on top of already serious charges like second-degree murder and manslaughter. But hate crime laws demand more than suspicion. Prosecutors must prove that bias wasn't just present, it was the motive. That means showing evidence, slurs, social media posts, eyewitness accounts. And according to reports, all of that is in play. Still, in court, proving hate as the driving force is never easy. The defense can argue self-defense, or try to blur the line between prejudice and intent. The legal stakes in a hate crime case are high. A conviction can lead to harsher penalties, longer sentences, and a criminal record that carries a heavier stain. For Popoff, the hate crime enhancement means that if found guilty, he could face 20 to 25 years behind bars. Back in August 2023, media outlets reported that his next court date was set for October 10th. But since then, silence. No updates, no headlines. The case has drifted from the public eye, but for those who knew O'Shea, the weight of that night still lingers. That night at the Mobil gas station on Coney Island Avenue began as a carefree moment of joy for O'Shea Sibley and his friends. Voguing to Beyoncé's Renaissance, they showed what it meant to live loudly as Black queer creators. But what happened afterwards turned their freedom into a tragedy, one that struck a chord across the entire world. The reason why this case resonates so deeply is Sibley's joy of expressively declaring his part in the Black queer ballroom tradition was met not with acceptance, but with deadly hatred. He became a symbol of all who remain vulnerable simply for being who they are. This wasn't an isolated incident. Before Sibley, 5 others in the LGBTQ community were killed. Reports cited the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, a New York-based organization that measures hate against those who identify with the LGBTQ community, noting that violence and harassment had risen significantly across the U.S., and that individuals should not have to live in fear if they're expressing themselves. Sibley's death reminded the world that such harm is still frighteningly real. He was dancing to Renaissance, an album that celebrated Black queer joy. But because of the hate of a few, he ended up losing his life. The public reaction reflected this painful irony. In essence, Sibley's death revealed two painful truths. One was that while Black queer joy is revolutionary, it's still unprotected. This means that displaying one's own identity in public can often lead to confrontations, while it shouldn't. And, in some cases like Sibley's, these confrontations can result in death. The other was about the fact that hate crime in the U.S. has indeed become very real. Sibley wasn't hiding, he was celebrating, and celebrating is what led to his death, meaning that people are simply at risk because of the way they live. While all of this was unfolding after Sibley's death, he was being laid to rest. Just days after the murder, O'Shea Sibley's father launched a GoFundMe campaign, a plea for help to lay his son to rest. The link made its way across Twitter, now known as X, as shock turned into grief across the country. Sibley had moved to New York, chasing a dream to dance, to make a name for himself. But in the end, his body was brought back home, to Philadelphia, where his final goodbye was held. As his death continued to draw attention against hate crime nationwide, his loved ones gathered that Tuesday morning at the Met on North Broad Street to say their final goodbye. In honor of Sibley, the event was named the grand finale of O'Shea Leon Sage Sibley. Among the attendees at the funeral were his parents, siblings, close friends, the Philadanco Dance Club, and many more. One of his friends, D'Angelo Cameron, praised his dance skills and valued his friendship.
Would you allow this to happen?
Sibley's sister commented on the positivity O'Shea brought with him and said life without her brother was like a night without a moon. One of his middle dance teachers who attended the funeral recalled fond memories of O'Shea during that time and said he will forever be remembered. At the funeral, Otis Pena, a brother-like friend of O'Shea, the same friend who covered O'Shea's stabbed chest to keep him from bleeding out, shared how unique O'Shea truly was, and the positivity he brought to those around him. Overwhelmed with grief, O'Shea's father took a deep breath before facing the cameras. His voice was heavy, his words raw.
He was just a loving child, you know what I mean? He just showed love, and he always was about family. O'Shea was always about family.
He spoke about the pain of losing his son, a pain that hadn't eased since the moment O'Shea was taken. And yet, through the heartbreak, he acknowledged the outpouring of support for himself, for his family, and for the memory of O'Shea Sibley. Apart from this, Philadanco, the dance club O'Shea had been a part of since his teenage years, announced a scholarship program to support children and honor his legacy. The state of Philadelphia also issued a proclamation to recognize his contributions to the arts and the LGBTQ+ community. As the final words were spoken and the last notes of music echoed through the Met's Grand Hall, there was no mistaking the weight of what had been lost. O'Shea Sibley was being laid to rest, but he was leaving behind a movement, a light, and a voice that continues to be heard today. His casket stood as both a farewell and a reflection. The people around it stood not only to mourn, but to honor him. While some wore all black to express their grief, others, like Otis Pena, chose bright colors like orange to express everything O'Shea stood for. On August 8th, 2023, at the Met, there were memories. Memories of a young man who departed the world too soon. Memories of a man who turned dance into magic and stood tall in front of a world in which he didn't know where hate would greet him, only being who he really was. But where a select few in this world didn't have much appreciation for O'Shea, there were many more who truly loved him and continue to love him for who he was. That day in August 2023, The curtain may have closed on O'Shae's final act, but a part of the world still continues to dance to his rhythm. Rest in peace, O'Shae Leon Sage Sibley. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more cases like this. And if you're ready for another gripping case, check out the next video below.